people to take their seats. We're going to start remarkably punctually in a couple of minutes.
I think so.
Huh?
I made already.
Why?
I made this already. I think so. Yes, but with micro.
Can we see each other?
No, you cannot. Yourself or of you. And if you touch twice, okay. But I want to hear what they're thinking.
Alessandra, can you please switch off the mic until you speak? Because there are 100 people who are listening to you.
Good.
Okay, we are perfectly punctual. It's now 2 o'clock, so I'd like to welcome everybody present in the room and those joining us virtually. My name is Stephen Taylor, and I'm going to kick off the proceedings. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you here to Aria Science Park, where we're very pleased to host this meeting. It's a meeting which is one of a series on which we have collaborated with the JRC, and we're very pleased to host this meeting today. The reason I emphasised, there are two reasons why I emphasised the fact that we're beginning so punctually. One is that it always surprises people if we start things punctually here in Italy, but it does happen from time to time. And the second is because I'm going to be fairly rigorous in trying to keep all of our presenters, so you are warned. I will be trying to keep all of our presenters to time, because time is very precious. We're going to be talking about discussing something in which time is critical. Because if we want to successfully move the outputs of research to market, then time is our enemy. If we delay, it means that someone else will beat us to market. It means that we will not successfully valorize the results of our research. Someone else will get there first. And that means we will not generate the economic returns that it is possible to generate from research. And those economic returns are what permit us to have thriving economies that feed back into, through taxation, into government spending, and allow government spending to further facilitate government-funded research, which together with industry and industry-funded research can help us to build economic growth. If we don't get things to market promptly, quickly enough, if we don't make good use of our time, then we will find that we're not competitive in that equation, and the whole equation then breaks down. If that equation breaks down, there are insufficient revenues flowing to government for it to fund all of the things it would like to fund. And those of you who work in the research community know that when government cuts come around, research is not excluded, unfortunately. So if we want to make the whole system work, the whole system needs to be in equilibrium. And that means that we, as a community, as an ecosystem, need to work together to make sure that we promptly address all of the issues that it is necessary to address, to make sure that the results of our excellent research flow promptly towards industrial applications that can generate new products, new processes, new business opportunities, and therefore economic growth and prosperity. In this case, innovation is the key to long-term sustainable growth. And it's sustainable as well as being inclusive because it includes all of the stakeholders present in this room. And I mean that both professionally, sectorally, and geographically. Because here we have a selection of representatives from many organizations representing countries all across Southeastern Europe, countries that are either members of the European Union or aspire to be members of the European Union in the near future. We would like to see innovation play a strong role in the further development of your economies and the further development of an integrated European economy that can bring prosperity to all. So without further ado, I'm going to thank Giancarlo Carratti and ask him to say a few words, and I shall be looking forward to meeting all of you personally through the course of the event today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Good morning, buongiorno, thanks a lot for coming here, thanks a lot to Stephen for arranging the weather. Maybe you can do something more on temperature. Let's see if tomorrow it gets better because it's a bit cold. Why we are here? Well, first of all, because this is one of the leading, if not the leading, science park in Italy. And we have also the luxury of being very close to the Western Balkans countries. So it's a very good opportunity. And also your massive presence here witness that it was a very good idea to organize this in Trieste. And they have real experience, probably the best in Italy, as far as I know, that can really support this process of technology transfer. Now, today we have, first of all, we are in streaming, and we also be recorded, so also to the speakers, don't say things that you don't want to say, because you're probably being watched by, I guess, many hundreds of people, because, for instance, the last event we had in Belgrade, we had 500 people in streaming, and this was circulated to thousands of people, so probably will become a bit, I hope that this will be useful. And why this? Because we believe that we can develop the best instrument in the world to support innovation, but if we don't have people who know how to work the instrument, who know how to apply this instrument doesn't work. So we always try to do the things in a way that our community also, practitioner community, will have opportunity to learn in the making how to also participate in the setup and also in the implementation of the instrument. Here we received a lot of applications. Unfortunately, we could not accept all of them, but we did quite a rigorous selection. So the people who are here, the people really who are involved in technology transfer, innovation, and who have a genuine interest in technology transfer. And I'm also very pleased that this is a project that is done in collaboration with our colleagues in the Commission. Now you don't see them because there is a slide, but the people who were on the screen before, there are colleagues in DG NEAR who have the political role of supporting the collaboration and development of Western Balkan, preparing them further for the accession to the European Union. So they are collaborating with us in this important project, because we know that innovation is certainly something that without it we don't go very far, both in Western and in Eastern Europe. Now, I have to acknowledge also the preparation of these events. You have seen also a paper on what is proof of concept. This has been drafted by Elena here. I think it's, for me, it's very explained in simple words. So if you have not read it, probably you have time to read it. So this we know we are talking about the same thing and not about other things. So we will have a lot of examples. And we hope that out of this event, there will be the possibility also to design a new instrument together with you that may be possibly applied for the future of the Western Balkans. Now, where is technology transfer putting itself, or where is the position of technology transfer in the general political context? Now, you have a slide here, which I prepared a couple of days ago. We're talking about innovation system. Innovation system was invented for national innovation system, is a way for politicians to try to concentrate resources and to bring organizations together to develop the diffusion and exploitation of the technology, improve, in particular, the smart growth, so improve economic growth, job, and sustainability. And this is a general objective, and we realize that it works better at regional level because the actors are better known, and therefore all our regional activities, which are supported by DG Regio, they have mandatory that a lot of at least 55% of the Objective 2 region should be directed at innovation. It should consider something that is called smart specialization. What is smart specialization is a new way of, well, a new way, it existed already, but it's a new packaging of saying that we have to concentrate on areas which are important for the region. I mean, in some region, like here, for instance, in Trieste, there is a very important shipbuilding industry, one of probably the biggest in the world. There is very important food cluster industry. So these are the areas which are generating more jobs, where there is already a value chain where the activity should focus in the future. And this is what smart specialization, and we develop this through a process in which we bring together the different actors, the triple helix actors. And so it's bottom-up process, and each region has its own point of strength. Of course, this doesn't mean that you have to forget the other ones, but I mean, you have to concentrate and focus on those. So sometimes you have to pick also winners. Then, out of this, once we have a smart specialization strategy, which is done at a national level or regional level, it depends on the size of the country, then we have policies. And the policies which are concerned with innovation are mainly research and development, market policies in terms of regulation, creating the business environment. Education is very important, and business sector as well in internationalization, development of small and medium enterprise. And then also very important is the skills policy, because, well, I had the pleasure of participating in the summit of the Western Balkans, and one of the items that was mentioned by many ministers was there was a skill mismatch between where society is going and what the education is providing. And so vocational training, education, and curricula should be more oriented towards the needs of the country, of the region, and going back to smart specialization. So this is all the political frame, and then we have the implementation. In the implementation, there are different policy measures, and one of them is technology transfer. And technology transfer stands at the interface between markets, R&D, education, and business. This is where we are trying to bring this together to try to have a coherent frame. And there what we have TTO, technology transfer offices, that are looking into different, they have different instruments. One, for instance, development of business intelligence, and that's one area that we are developing. The second one is proof of concept that we discussed today. Then we have to find out also market research, entrepreneurship development, IP management, contract research, licensing, spin-off, and startup. So these are more or less the wide areas where technology transfer offices have to work. They have to support the local development from research to the market through different instruments. And now if we talk about startup and spin-off, which is a very important means to create companies and generate jobs, hopefully if then large company comes into the field, then we look at, there are different instruments like financial instrument, innovation vouchers, business angels, venture capital, growth capital, bankable project, innovation procurement. These are all type of activities which are important in this frame. But today we discuss proof of concept, and here there are different models. You can have the decentralized, could be managed decentralized at the level of a TTO. It could manage at centralized at the level of a region. There are different examples. It could be a mixed hub and spoke system where you have a combined regional and national or local university. I mean, all these things, they're going to be discussed in these 2.5 days, and I hope that we will try to identify at the end something which is most adapted at the Western Balkan region, which is the main objective of our conference today. So with this message, I would like to thank the organizer, in particular Stephen and Andrea for organizing, having everything arranged, and thanks to you.
I should add that, as is always the case, I'm sitting up here but didn't really do any of the work. Andrea, who's sitting a few rows in, did much of the work, and some of my other colleagues who will be presenting during the course of the event, you will get to meet later. And similarly, Giancarlo's team is, some are present in the front row, others are around, and you'll meet them as well. So a thank you to all of the people involved in every aspect of the organisation of the event, and of course all of the speakers who are going to be presenting. And that brings us to our first speaker, Alexandra Kostova, who's going to be joining us in video conference, hopefully on the screen behind me right now. Alexandra is Project Assistant at the Directorate General for Neighbourhood and Enlargement Negotiations of the European Commission. So, Alexandra, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. It won't be me. We have also a head of section. Do you hear?
Yes. Can you hear us loud and clear?
Yeah.
Okay. This is Stephen Schläger, our head of section.
Yes, Stephen, sorry for this slight confusion, and hello to everyone in Trieste. So the confusion is maybe more that you see in the program. You saw our head of unit, Mr. Colin Wolfe, being announced to address you, but unfortunately he is not able to come today because of some other urgency. So he's sending his greetings and apologies, because he really wanted to do it. As Giancarlo knows, he's a very big supporter and fan of the whole proof of concept, innovation, smart specialization aspect. So, but since in our unit it's not only one wolf, but two wolves, so my name is Wolfgang Schläger, so I am the head of sector in dealing with all the IFI platforms which we manage together, where we try to find leverage with our EU grants and the credit lines and other instruments from the IFIs to boost the socio-economic development in the Western Balkans. So I'm in charge for all these platforms, be it for investments in infrastructure, be it for energy efficiency, but also for SME development. And in that respect, I'm very happy to address you today, because we have, just to remind you, this very big platform called Enterprise Development Innovation Facility, where we have, which we set up in 2012, in order to really, for the whole region, to improve the system, the ecosystem for the SMEs, to find solutions to the biggest problems they have in terms of access to finance in all stages of their development, from the startups to the expansions of companies. And we have a very strong technical assistance arm as well, so not just financial instruments, where we work with the different partners. And this platform has grown over time and has expanded. Just to give you a figure, we put 150 million euros in grants from the EU into the platform, and we have so far triggered investments into SMEs of more than 650 million since 2012. That's quite significant. We have some figures saying that has helped to consolidate and create jobs of about 20,000 people. Now, we had the pleasure to discuss now the proof of concept idea already in one of the last meetings in the steering committee in Stockholm of this platform, because it's not just for it's not just access to finance and TA, but it's also this platform is used to discuss with all stakeholders who are involved, in particular also the representatives from the different beneficiary countries, but also the IFIs JRC and other players who are important. We are also discussing the general situation, general needs, and general challenges of the sector. And amongst different topics, the proof of concept stage, the technology transfer from the research stage to the actually marketing of a new product and making it ready for business has been identified as still a big gap which we need to address and we need to fill. And so that's why I'm very happy that you have this meeting today, where you will discuss further how such a possible support could look like, what's the relevance for it. I guess in different countries there will be different situations. We are ready to, in principle, to look positively at a potential financing, but we are still in discussions with the JRC, with the EIB on how it could look like, and we need a bit more work on that. So your contribution, your discussions today will be very helpful, and I hope they're going to be fruitful. Looking forward to get the conclusions and the input to it, and I think that will be then very important for our further reflection of possible financing. Maybe as a last word for the introduction, and I think that is good news for everyone. If you have followed the speech of our Commission President Juncker last week when he made a State of the Union speech to the Parliament, and not only in the speech, but it's quite interesting if you look on the website, there are a couple of important documents which he has also provided, and one of the documents, which is a letter of intent, which will show what the Commission, what he wants to do still under his mandate in the next 3 years. You see that the perspective of the Western Balkans for enlargement has been beefed up. So it's the first time that you see a clear date in the debate. So the idea is that his vision is that we prepare now a strategy as DG for neighborhood and enlargement for Montenegro and Serbia with the perspective of them joining in 2025. But this doesn't mean, of course, that's just we focus on these two countries. We focus, of course, this will get a boost to all the countries in the Western Balkans, and that has already been given a new dynamic in the House, I can tell you there, and that's why also my head of unit, Colin Wolf, is not here. Some people are getting now very busy in already translating this new approach. And this will put, again, the Western Balkans more in the focus. We will have more, possibly more financing coming our way. And I think in the perspective of this, we can be quite happy, and I hope it will, in the end of the day, help our cause. And thank you very much for everyone to work together on it, and I hope you have a good meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wolfgang, and apologies for the confusion at the beginning of that presentation. I hadn't realized that we had switched wolves, and Alexandra wouldn't be giving the presentation, but Wolfgang would. So I appreciate your being with us today, and thank you for that opening address. I should get the next one right, as she's sitting immediately to my left. I'm going to save any questions that the audience might have until we've done all of the presentations, and then we can have perhaps a few minutes for some discussion. But if I could ask you, Vanya, to take the stage and to give us your thoughts and welcome address, and we'll move right along. So thank you again, Wolfgang.
Thank you, and thank you also for the invitation, Giancarlo and the DGJRC, to give the welcome speech. Before I start, I'll just quickly say where I come from. So my organization is the Regional Cooperation Council. It's an intergovernmental organization that has been formed by the Southeast European governments, 13 countries to be precise, including the Western Balkan 6 plus Croatia, Slovenia, Greece, Turkey, Bulgaria, and Romania. And it comes as a successor to the Stability Pact. The key cooperation mechanism for us is the Southeast 2020 strategy, which was adopted by our governments in the Western Balkans, so the 6 governments of the Western Balkans in 2013. And our role is to coordinate the implementation and the monitoring of the implementation of that strategy. I'm saying this because that strategy also highlights some of the commitments that our governments have made with regards to research and development. So I'll speak to the policy objectives of Giancarlo's presentation. So just to briefly tell you what our governments have committed to. So in the Southeast 2020 strategy, there is a specific pillar called the Smart Growth Pillar, where the countries have prioritized cooperation in research and development and have placed quite an important role on research, development, and innovation as means of better growth for the economies of the region. For us, this sort of changes the economic strategy for the region, moving from let's say, lower to higher growth and high technology innovation type of growth. This is, I think, a very big challenge for the region, and it takes quite a lot of different policies to come properly together to achieve this change and to actually make the movement to growth faster in the region. What I would like to highlight then, following up on this Southeast 2020 strategy, just recently in July in this same city where Giancarlo also attended, the prime ministers of the region have also prioritized cooperation in research and development. What they have decided to focus on is exactly the smart specialization strategy development in the region, where, as far as I'm aware, only Serbia has started to develop the smart specialization strategies, but all 6 prime ministers, and Montenegro, but also all other 4 ministers have then said we also want to develop smart specialization strategies for our economies. And they have also, in this particular regard, they have emphasized that they want to do it actively in cooperation with business and industry, as well as the research community, which I think also shifts a little bit the discourse that has been present in the region so far, where research and development and innovation strategies were developed primarily within the academic and research communities on one hand, but they also stressed 2 other elements: the investment into research infrastructure in the region, as well as developing easier access to finance for both businesses and scale-ups and startups, and they have emphasized the small and medium enterprises. So in this regard, I think particularly this workshop and this project overall fits very well into these strategic goals that the prime ministers have set out for the region, and its results should also be contributing to these wider strategic goals. So I see it very much as also the operationalization of this, sometimes big goals which maybe don't have tangible results unless there is an operationalization and implementation that follows it. Now, what I would like to say in addition, as something that is important for us also with regards to this workshop and this project, and particularly the proof of concept which we will be discussing here over the next 2 days, is perhaps to take into account, of course, the specificities of this region into account. I'm not a technology transfer expert or similar, so I do think that if we have a good community here, we can discuss these specificities in better detail than I would be able to do it. But I would like to say at least two things that come up often when we discuss the specificities of the Western Balkans with our EU neighbors. I think there is a particular issue with the investment in R&D overall. So we monitor the implementation of the Southeast 2020 strategy, and this shows very clearly that the investments have stayed below 1% of GDP over the 2 decades now. So that's I think a very specific element for the region. On the other hand, there is also a difference in the amount of researchers. So the research communities in the region are relatively small compared to some other EU member states. And of course, the transformation of the industry that has been happening across all of the countries over the last 2 decades is very specific, and it's been on a large scale and has also resulted in a lot of small and medium enterprises. So these are, I think, certain specificities of the region that should be taken into account when designing any instrument to facilitate any kind of investments into the region. And I would also pick up from the last speaker that sometimes we talk of the Western Balkans as a region, which does have a lot of common characteristics, but indeed there are very big differences within that region, between different economies and between both in size, even though maybe we are all smaller than Germany, but then again, within this region there are big differences, and in also characteristics of its economy and of its academic and research systems. So I think this is something that is sometimes overlooked when we try to create support mechanisms for the region. So I'll end here, but I very much look forward to hearing the discussions over the next 2 days, and I look forward to bringing also the results of this project back into the reporting to the prime ministers in the next July summit, where I hope we can also say that we have moved forward in the implementation from where they met 3 months ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanya. We have the pleasure of having with us today 2 members of the Board of Governors of the JRC. So I'd like to invite the first of those, Albena Butsova, to the podium, and to add, again, our thanks to the JRC for the organisation of this event.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm maybe one of the oldest members of board of JRC.
Most experienced.
I can say this. Before to start, just I'd like to thank you to organizer for this event, and to say that innovation for us occupies a really very important place, bearing in mind that Bulgaria will be the leader of presidency, European presidency in the next 6 months. Innovation has a place among the 3 main priorities in Bulgarian presidency. We call them 3C: cohesion, competitiveness, and consensus. Consensus concerning support and European perspectives for Western Balkans, and consensus concerning migration policy. Competitiveness concerning innovation and transfer of technology, and also economic growth and new jobs. And cohesion concerning further EU cohesion policy, of course, and European structural funds. Main specific priorities, I'm really very happy to say this because I just heard what happened, is the Western Balkan and European perspective, safety, and coherence. So, in order of reaching our main messages and taking into consideration also S3, we have designed our activities bearing in mind 2 very important things. One, that of course research and innovation are driving forces for modern economy. It's a well-known fact. Second is that in the period 2000-2015, nearly 15% of overall productivity has been reached thanks to innovation. And bearing in mind this, we have next, let's say, main activities like first utilization of innovation and transfer technology in order to build an inclusive and innovative society, tackle, of course, with the social challenges where in Bulgaria are too much, maximizing effects of research results. And so the main message is more supply, more demand than supply, because for the moment we have just the opposite story. To give chance to generic business models and to much extent labor markets using fourth industrial revolution opportunities. I'm afraid, but in some cases we can create some stress. But anyway, this is important, of course, to support transversal skills for the creation of new knowledge. We are looking for the next steps, how to have effective and workable instruments. How? First, to addressing the new strategy frame of EU initiatives ET 2020, to have a new schemes in forthcoming next generation framework program, where to see absolutely clear where the place of our region, to providing new opportunities for new member states and associated countries in a small-scale collaborative projects aiming at speedy scale and scope Europe. And finally, of course, to enforcing cohesion policy in our region. To complete with this, during the presidency, especially in the roof of the GRC and the special support of GRC and of course of our government, we are planning 2 events. One, for me, it's really very impressive. This is a high-level conference, innovation, transfer and technology, and smart specialization, way to success for Europe and Western Balkan. Main organizer, Ministry of Economy, because S3 is just on the roof of the Ministry of Economy. Special supporter, Ministry of Regional Development and Ministry of Education and Science. By the way, as a satellite event, but not exactly satellite, because for me it's also important, this is special competition for young innovators and young researchers. And we also would like to raise a discussion upon one, let's say, a little bit provocative idea, to establish a seal of excellence for the region, bearing in mind all TBC programs and also Interreg Europe program, etc. But this is just on the frame of discussion that we are planning to raise during the presidency. Before to stop, again, I'd like to thank for the organizing of this excellent event, and I would like to wish to the organizer a will and optimism to organize the next one. Thank you.
I'd just like to remind Albena and all of the speakers that you are being recorded, so we've now got that on tape. So thank you for that. And we're obviously very delighted to be hosting this event today and look forward to many more events and many more collaborations. I particularly enjoyed your comments about involvement of young researchers, young innovators, because we all know that that's where the future lies. So I'd like to call upon our second member of the Board of Governors, Atanas Kochov, to give his address. Thank you, Atanas.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the possibility to speak in front of you. And it's very huge honor for me, not only because I'm a member of the Board of Governors, but I was exposed on a real implementation of a proof of concept for the past 6 months in Mexico, since that I was a visiting professor at Iberoamericana University, where Volkswagen and Audi, together with these systems, are implementing proof of concept by establishing 25 spin-off companies within the University Iberoamericana in Puebla, Mexico. And they're lucky because the earthquake was yesterday, but everything is safe up to now. So I will start with my presentation. I have to find it here. It's this one here. So since that I am professor, I hope that I'm not going to speak more than the time that is assigned. And Steven, please, if I go a little bit longer, just stop me. Actually, we have been witnesses for a lot of workshops organized not only by GRC but also by other organizations where we have talked about knowledge transfer, technology innovation, IP commercialization, creating market from research and development, etc. Now we are talking about proof of concept, and probably very soon we're going to talk about the technology commercialization, or we are going to talk about the luxury marketing as a new concept that is coming, and it's going to be very important also for the company. But we have to go back to the reality, and the reality is actually the Western Balkan countries. So where we are and what we are doing and on which stage actually we are, and what we can do, not only in my country, in Macedonia, but also in the whole region and also in the Southeast Europe. Can we do the creating markets from the research results? I would say yes, we can do it. But what we are, let's say, lacking, we are lacking with the existing legislation, with the mentality of the people living in the Balkans, and also with the challenges of establishing public-private partnership, especially at the universities. So if we take a look for the past 20-25 years, you're going to see that almost all, as it was mentioned from the representative from the regional council, we are still structurally very big. The employment rate is very big up to now. It's over 20% almost in all of the Western Balkan countries, and the biggest problem actually is brain drain. So it's always, according to the previous what I have said, it's always a question about the philosophy, what is better in the Western Balkan countries, to have small companies with a huge profit, or let's say research, or is it going to be a huge companies that are going to have less profit? It's still the social impact is very important, and probably it's the most important thing when the prime ministers are talking about implementation of different strategies. So I would say always the biggest problem is actually the traditional universities in the region, and not only in the region but also in the neighboring countries of the Western Balkan countries like Romania, Bulgaria, even in Croatia, even in Slovenia. So what is the biggest problem? The biggest problem is actually the universities are kind of protected places for research and teaching, and we are looking for truth always over there. It's always a competition about the tuition fees, about the study programs that we are covering at the different universities, and we are also witness of massification or mass increase of the number of the universities and study programs, and even they are not compatible between the countries in the Western Balkans. So it means if you are a student in one country and if you want to transfer your credits to the other country, in that case you are stuck. You cannot do it because there is no compatibility of the study programs and the work that is done at those universities. So for the future generation, the biggest problem is actually which strategy should be accepted for the development of the universities and the research and innovation in the Western Balkan countries. Where we are now and where we would like to go in the future, and how we're gonna do it. I was running for a rector position last year, and actually I was promoting also entrepreneurial universities. So it wasn't accepted because the people are not ready to be actually a part of the entrepreneurial university, because it means a lot of obligations, a lot of research, a lot of work that should be done. So not only that, but also commercialization of the university intellectual property, which is a huge problem. We are facing the biggest problem of a lot of researchers from the university that are not working actually the research within the university, but they're doing the research outside of the university in another company or NGOs that are established. And the people who are from the university and sitting here at the audience, they know the problem that we are facing. And now it's how everybody is going to be entrepreneur within the university. So I really like the scheme which is given from the European Innovation Center, where how to come from the idea to the final product, including the proof of concept actually somewhere in the middle. That's the biggest problem, and we are trying to do it also at our university, at my university, especially at my faculty, by doing different type of projects. So the next part of the presentation will be a little bit more optimistic. What I have done as the Dean of the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering for the past 8 years. And actually, something that I would like to mention, Erasmus as a program that is provided by the European Commission, which is growing in something, is something that is going to change the mentality of the people at the university in Western Balkans, because the students, especially those who are from the master and who are deeply involved in the research, can be a part of that. So if you see on the scheme, actually the last two countries are actually Macedonia and Lithuania, with the smallest one, but there is no any other country from the Western Balkans for 2013-2014, but everything has been changed in 2015 because even the budget is 4 times bigger. So we have a representative also here from the Fund for Technology Innovation in Macedonia. We have accepted and implemented all the regulation and harmonization of all the articles according to the European Commission articles. And they have also started with the instrument for financing proof of concept. And 4 companies, spin-off companies, has been established in December 2016. And 2 of those are actually, all 4 are at our university, and 2 are in the same building of our of the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering. One is the Vision Dynamic, which is a system for 3D mapping by using the drones, and the other one is a Smart Tech power management system, and the 2 others are actually in the field of the IT section. So, facing with the situation, with the luck where we are, actually we have decided to create a new policy to become a tiger, which means technology innovation for greater economic revitalization of the country. So that was the acronym, and with this acronym actually we have proposed to the German Agency for International Cooperation, at the time GTZ and now GIZ, and also USAID, that we would like to establish a technology transfer center at the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering, and we have promised that it's going to grow. And really, starting from 2005, actually that center has grown. And we have done so many projects, and we are very proud with that, especially in the field of changing the mentality of the people and inviting them to work to work on the research and innovation within the faculty. And also we have actually helped to establish more than 50 startup companies for our students. From our students, for example, one is ICL Logistics, which is helping the customs in a transport system between Macedonia and Bulgaria and Serbia. Then there is another one, which is Grouper.mk, which is online sale. So, and actually we have continued for 6 cycles to give almost 100,000 euros every year for like a grants for opening a startup company within the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering. So the first technology transfer office actually was called CIRCO, which means Center for Research, Development and Continuing Education. Still now it's already it's a big company with almost 8 different sections, And every professor who is from our faculty is a part of this center, has its own business inside of the center. And the work with the companies and the research goes actually through this center, because it's a non-profit organization, and it's a business model that actually it's a pretty good one. Something that is very important, what we have done within this center, is actually the resource efficient and cleaner production regional network, where 7 different countries from the Western Balkan region and plus Moldova and Ukraine are participating to fulfill the goal 9 from the goals for sustainability, which is actually directly we are working to improve the technology in a small and medium enterprises. The results are actually, the total investments are almost 13 million euros in a payback period of time of 4 years. For example, if you take a look from the right side, within this activity we have created a new packaging for honey for Montenegro, and a company has been established in Macedonia producing different type of packaging that is a national symbol of Montenegro, actually the typical cap. Or the other picture which is down actually is how we have recaptured the heat from the for baking coffee from the company Droga, which is actually a Slovenian investment in Macedonia. And there is a lot of other positive examples where we have done within this project with UNIDO a combination of knowledge transfer, technology transfer, but also technology innovation in a small and medium enterprises. The last one, what we are preparing right now, together with our Norwegian partners and University of Ljubljana, actually, is the project, the network system of technology and innovative infrastructure for the whole Balkans. The whole idea is to invite all the countries, and especially university from the technical sciences, to be a part of this project, which is going to be also named Tiger. We have already submitted a proposal to the EU Commission, and I think that the first phase it's already positive, and we are waiting to see how we're going to continue after that in implementation of a proof of concept through this. So I have to mention also all of our sponsors and also agencies that are cooperating with us, that are helping financially. So thanks to all of them. JRC is a part of the European Commission, and that's why it's mentioned as European Commission, but all the other agencies. And I would recommend to everyone who is from the Western Balkans that do not be shy, just contact them directly, and they will be ready to cooperate with you in all different aspects. So thank you very much. I hope I was on time.
So thank you to Atanas, and thank you to all of the presenters this morning, both those physically present and those present virtually over video connections. We do have a few minutes for questions, so if there are any questions from the floor, please feel free to ask them now. Just raise your hand and I shall pick you out of the audience. This is the moment at which usually there's complete stony silence because nobody wants to be the first person to ask a question. So to fill that stony silence, hoping that someone will then raise a hand, I'll just pick out a couple of the things that have been mentioned in those introductory remarks. Obviously, the fact that we are all here today demonstrates the interest in, the need for, the absolute urgency to improve proof of concept, awareness, utilization, and development programs, not just in the Western Balkans, not just in Southeast Europe, but around the world generally. We here in Aria Science Park like to think that we have a few ideas and a few things that seem to be working. I recognize some faces in the audience that I know have programs that are ongoing and are developing other programs as well. It's encouraging to hear that there are existing and future programs in the pipeline to fund further developments of proof of concept. And it's interesting that despite the reality check on the fact that we are all here aware that it's easy to talk about Southeast Europe or talk about the Western Balkans as if it's an homogenous entity, the reality is that the one thing that you all have in common is that you're not the same. The only thing that is common to all of us is uniqueness, and that means that any program, any activity needs to be context-specific, needs to be contextualized. We here tend to take the approach that we will invent things where they don't exist. Where they do exist, we will blatantly try to copy the best in class, but usually what we found that means not copying lock, stock and barrel what already exists, but adapting what we adopt. So we firmly believe in a process of adaptation and adoption of whatever best practices we find around the world. Adaptation and adoption are two sides of the same coin, but they're both very important, have very important characteristics. If we want to adopt best practices, first of all, we need to go out and find them, assess them, and that means having metrics to judge what works and what doesn't work. And not always those metrics are readily available. And not always we're making comparisons of apples and apples. Sometimes we're mixing things and looking at different things. And that's why a document that explains the terminology and makes sure we're all talking about the same thing when we talk about proof of concept can be very useful. So I would remind you that the paper that you all now have access to is a good starting point to make sure that when we have conversations through the course of today and tomorrow or at dinner this evening, they're conversations about the same thing. But the necessity to adapt any best practice that you want to adopt is partly regulatory. When I first arrived here, we have an incubator which drives the creation of startup businesses. And the first thing I said, fresh off the boat from California, from Silicon Valley, was, no, you're doing this all wrong. You should be starting much more companies, and it doesn't matter if 95% of them fail, because they can always just go off and start another company the next day. And the reality is that's not the case here in Italy. It's not the case in most of Europe. It's certainly not the case in most of the Western Balkan states. The legacy legislation that we all have to deal with is legislation that wasn't necessarily written modeling or aspiring to ecosystems like you find in Silicon Valley or in the Boston corridor around MIT. It's legislation that had other objectives, other priorities, and other safety nets and safeguards. So the incentives that we have in our universities are mainly to do with publication of papers and not to do with the generation of economic activity or even patents and licensing. Incentivizing publication exclusively tends to make people publish prematurely and therefore not be able necessarily to patent what they've developed. So sometimes some of these things are in direct conflict. And certainly the legislation, the legislative frameworks that we have can be a disincentive to taking risk, can be a disincentive to starting new companies that can fail. So what we found is that we need to adapt those processes and do a lot of the work in phases that are slightly shifted with respect to the date of foundation of a company. So we do a lot of work before the foundation of a company rather than after the foundation of a company, which is what we tended to do in California. So having taken up a few minutes of your time with my thoughts on the presentations that we've had, someone by now should have thought of a question. Yes, sir, a brave man. If we can just pass the microphone, we'll bring the microphone round to you very quickly. And you get the prize this evening. You will be given a free aperitif when we get to the dinner, as being the first person to ask a question.
Hello, yay.
If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, of course. So first of all, good day, everybody. Nice to be here. So my name is Alexander. I come from a small, beautiful country of Moldova. So I'm a founder of a research organization, Mega, and Czech startup Enverace. And actually, I have a question to Mr. Atanas Koshov. Yeah.
So Atanas, if you'd like to come up.
It was an interesting idea about the entrepreneurial university. And as I come from both fields, I understand that in research, people want more time to do research, to do a thorough, well-documented research work. While in the entrepreneurial and startup communities, people need like fast, lean startup, pivoting here, there, finance now, angel investment, seed funding, and so on. So the pace of innovation is very fast, going like with like throwing darts at different things. So what is your point? How can a university or a research institution combine these conflicting time-related points and innovation developments, and whether the initiative with entrepreneurial university, do you aim to continue it or change it in some way and evolve it further on? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alexander, for your question. And because this was the problem that I was dealing for several months. Because in the Western Balkans, we have to be very fast if we would like to be a part of the European Commission, if we would like to be a part of the Europe. So if we are very slow, we are not going to do it. So it means there is no time to be loose. We have to switch on an entrepreneurial type of universities, where we're going to open all the labs and we're going to cooperate with our master and PhD students and to help them to open the spin-off. When I was promoting this concept, most of the, let's say, humanities study programs from the School of Law, Economics, and Philosophy, and all the others, they're like, you want to make a business at the university. That was the first approach. So it's not a question of making only business. It's a question of having fast research, to be innovative, to work with the companies, because there is no development projects in the companies in the region. And I'm sure about that because we did also the research and we have worked on the indicators. So what is actually the stage of research in a small and medium enterprises in the whole region? So we are very behind. And that's why all those instruments for small and medium enterprises. And I was talking also with the representative from the European Investment Bank. So there is so much money that are staying there and nobody is using it, you know. And it could be done within the entrepreneurial university, actually. Thanks.
So we're actually now coming to the end of our time. So I'd like to renew my thanks to Alexander for asking a question. I'll be expecting the rest of you to try and get some questions in through the course of the rest of today and tomorrow, and to have some productive discussions in the breaks, coffee breaks, and at the dinner this evening. But right now I'd like to invite our moderator for the next session to come and take over from me, and I'll take my place down in the front row with the rest of you. And I wish you a very successful and productive rest of the conference. Thanks again to all of the members of the panel from the first session. I appreciate very much your participation and the presentations. Also to Wolfgang for his presentation in video conference. So I'd like to ask Patrick Mccutcheon to come and take the podium and formally hand over the baton as moderator for the next session. And if the speakers for the next session, Andrea Alunni, Maddalena Forlan, Eladio Crego Gil, Andrea Kaluga, and Frank Tooley would like to come and take their positions on the stage, that would be great. Thank you very much indeed. Enjoy the rest of the session. If you could speak from the podium. Push the button, but if you could speak from the podium so people can speak from here too.
So how is it going to work in terms of the presentations? Is it clear for this panel?
I'm going to do them in the order that they are here.
With the slides.
I
have been already put? They have slides to present or not? Okay, so whoever has slides, would you mind there? So you already loaded it? Yes. Do you have slides? We received only 5 presentations. Okay, let's do that quickly. Reading. Eladio, is this one the last one? Copia. I hope I don't screw something up here. It's in Italian. Okay, that's Eladio. It's yours. How do you put this?
It's a USB.
Like here? Alright. Alright. This one?
Yep.
So, what was it? Copia. Learning Italian today. Incola. And then which one is left? I need to copy mine. I have only one slide. Anyone else has slides to give? Yeah, it's already there. Okay.
Well, thank you, Stephen, and apologies to the audience for the slight delay in starting this session. My name is Patrick Mccutcheon. I come from DG Research and Innovation, and the reason I'm here probably is because I'm responsible for the tech transfer financial instrument that we launched last year with the EIB group under Invention Equity. That covers proof of concept, but not only. We will later hear about another scheme at EU level, but the aim of this session is to hear what is happening at national, regional and institutional level in this space of PoC, and also to hear from the perspective of the investment community. So without further ado, I would like to invite the first speaker to come to the podium, and that's Ludwina Hammer, who comes from the investment side. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I prepared a presentation for you, however, it's not here now, so fortunately, I have it on paper, so I'll do my best to do it from here. So my name is Ludwina Hammer. I'm a fund manager of Unique. Unique is a proof of concept fund, investment fund, and we are based in the southwest part of the Netherlands. And I have a background in financing and investment venture capital for over 10 years. And Unique as our fund is 22 million euros big, and it has been initiated by Innovation Quarter, and Innovation Quarter is the regional development agency for the southwest of the Netherlands, and it has been funded by the 3 universities in that region, which is the Technical University of Delft, Leiden University, and Erasmus Medical Center. We are co-funded by the European Committee. It's like for 15 million euros, and each of the universities invested 2 million euros in the fund. And why did they start a proof of concept fund? Well, I think we all know. I think it's the same problem. We all know why. First of all, there is a financing gap for innovative companies in the proof of concept phase. I have a traditional venture capital background, and a lot of times I got like propositions at my table, and I was like, okay, if you do the pilot with customers, if you get your first clients, I'm happy to look at it again, but it's too early for us now. So that's one. And the other thing is, I have a background in finance, and let's be honest, all the technologies that are like, that come from those universities, they have like the wow factor. They're like brilliant, they're amazing. However, technology is not yet a business. So you can have like a great scientifically finding, building a company around it is something totally different. So what Unique does is connecting the scientific knowledge from the universities with the markets. And there were 3 themes that differentiate Unique. Of course, first of all, what I say is the close collaboration between the incubators in our region and the universities. And I would emphasize the word collaboration, because Unique is its own investment fund. So the investment decision is made by us and not by the universities. They don't have a say in whether we invest in the technology or not. It's my and my team's decision. And I would also like to stress out that we not only invest in spin-offs from the university, we also invest in companies in the region. So I would say the balance is around 40% spin-offs universities, the rest startups in the region of the southwest of the Netherlands. And also part of Unique is that we focus on what is essential for follow-on investment. What I would like to say with that is that if we invest in a company and the amount we invest in bridges to nowhere because it doesn't get to a point where the company is ready to get funded by venture capitalists or other ones, it has no meaning of putting the money in there. Another thing is, and I can say that with dry eyes because I'm from the investment world, we have a clear process with entrepreneur-friendly conditions. And I know a lot of investors say so, but being like from a venture capital background, where we got the legal documents of 50 to 100 pages, we have like one agreement with only 12 pages in there, and it's in plain vanilla terms. Okay, so how do we invest? We invest up to 300K in a convertible loan. So we always invest 300K because entrepreneurs always make the plan like that they fit to the 300K. We provide the money in tranches. And the first tranche is upon closing, the second tranche is after like they achieved certain milestones, and so is the last tranche. The interest is 8%, so 4% paid, 4% accrued. And there's no personal liability and standard conditions for everyone. So if we look at the portfolio from company A, it will have the same convertible loan agreement as if we look to the loan agreement for company B. And why did we choose a convertible loan? Because we want to stay away from the valuation discussion. Because valuation is a very hard thing to do. I mean, 0 valuation would be true. Maybe 1, 2, or 3 million would also be true. So we say, stay away from the valuation part. how the money will be used. As I said, it will be invested in tranches, and it's used for both technical validation and market validation. And also a very important component of it is getting the company investor ready. Because a lot of entrepreneurs think that within 1 month they can raise the next round of funding, and we all know that it will take months. So we also emphasize on getting your company, like having your pitch deck ready, having your pitch ready for your entrepreneurs, make your company at a stage where it's fundable, and that you can get your message, bring the message to other investors. As it is a convertible loan, and now my investor heart is a bit bleeding, but it's up to the entrepreneur if they want to pay it back or that they want to convert it into the next round. If they want to pay it back, we have a scheme at the beginning which says, okay, how much money you need to pay after 3 years, or we convert with a 25% discount for the next share price in the next round. Okay, so the company we invest in new companies. That means we don't invest in projects of existing companies, so we don't do project financing. We invest in TRL level 3 till 5, and we invest over all sectors. Although I would like to stress out that when it comes to software as a service companies or platform companies, we don't invest in. So it will be more like, I would say, hardcore technology or life sciences.
1 minute.
All right, okay, I'm going to speed up. Okay, some data. We started last year, June 2006, the fund was launched. We had since then over 280 funding requests. And when you look at our portfolio now, we have invested in 15 of them. So are all the others we invested in like not worth investing? No, not necessarily. Some of them were out of our investment scope, I would say over 40–50%. But also a lot of them would say we didn't think we're ready to get investors or the plan wasn't good enough. Sometimes the technology was great, but if you look at the product market fit, it was not enough to say, okay, this could grow into a sustainable company. And sometimes maybe we said no, and we will be wrong in the end. That could also be possible, of course. If you look at the sectors we invest in, the top are like life sciences, high tech, and safety and security, because of the universities we have and the Hague security cluster we have in The Hague. Was it my last minute? Yes, okay. Thank you very much for it.
Stephen, if I understand, it's only the mic from the podium that is working?
Just for the collector.
Yeah. Okay. Then for that, I just mentioned in advance the question I will ask you to respond to later is if you say you don't value the technology of the project, the question I would ask you to respond to when we come to the Q&A later is what do you look for? Do you do some form of technology assessment, and if so, how does that vary from an investment? With that, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. It's Madeleine Furlan, who I shouldn't welcome to here because she's from here, and she's going to talk about 2 recent projects.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As Patrick said, I work here. I work in Area Science Park, and so I'm going to present our experience in managing proof of concept funds, and actually more than managing proof of concept funds, I'd like to talk about the design of the technology transfer process we made to grant this fund. As we all know, technology transfer is difficult. Technology transfer processes are affected by a gap. And there is one problem that relies on stage of development. Often research results are in a very embryonic stage, so it's very hard to test even their technical applicability in industrial context. Then there is even the problem of assessing their market potential. But there are some other problems that one, I think, can be due to a lack of marketing and exploitation strategies by university and research center. And then there is even a problem of communication, because sometimes companies and industrial sector even don't know what are the real potentiality and capabilities of university and research center. So we think that PoC funding and PoC grants is a mean to bridge the gap in the process, addressing the stage of development of the results. But it cannot be considered as a standalone measure, because it has to be part of a process managing all the relevant aspects of tech transfer activities. And so targeting also the problems related to marketing, to exploitation, and of communication. So I'm going to present two initiatives we manage. One is a pilot project awarded and financed by the Italian Ministry of Education, University and Research, that was aimed at supporting exploitation of research results. It was a nationwide project that involved several universities and research bodies. And with this project, we provide research grants of 30,000 euros to support a co-development project. And the main criteria to select the project to be financed was the involving of a company in the experimental plan to test the applicability of the research result. The idea was to move the validation of this result from the lab in a real industrial context. But to select the project to be financed, we build a whole technology transfer process that addresses all the phases. So the main phases was the scouting, so how we select the results from all the companies and the research bodies involved. Then it was the assessment of the result, and then the matchmaking with the company interest in further develop the result. And only at the end, we provide the grants to support the development. Of course, we know that the amount of the grants was not sufficient to take a result from the lab to the market. The idea was to lower the risk of the companies to choose a research result of a patent of a university, and to have all the elements to decide whether if to invest in that result, in that technology or not. And so these are all the phases. We start with the scouting, and we ask the Technology Transfer Office of the partners of the project to help us in selecting, because we thought they have a deep in-house knowledge of their labs, of the work of their researchers. Of course, we provide some common formats to collect them, but the real scouting was made by our scientific partners. Then, how we select, we look into two main topics. One was IPR. If there was a patent, if the result was already protected by a patent, we analyze the legal status of this patent. And if it wasn't, we conduct prior art searches. So it was to say a company, there is a patent, the patent is strong, the patent is valid in these countries, or to say it's not yet patented, but it is possible to do it. And the other aspect we consider was the market potential. And we analyzed the market potential with business intelligence tools. And these were qualitative analyses that we make with our internal team of analysts. Then, to have the ranking of the technology selected, we ask some industrial expert to evaluate the results and to have a ranking. Then, to find the companies, we use a web platform, and you will find the address on the poster that are outside. I don't have the time to go through the platform. Following the contacts with the platform, we have one-to-one meetings, and we participate in brokerage events, or we contact directly the companies we found with our analysis, with our desk analysis. And then, if the companies have, they subscribe a formal letter of interest in the company, then we ask them to write a co-development project with the research group, and this research project has a plan of activities. Then we write even the intellectual property agreement, and we define if there were, if the company wished to co-finance the development of the project. In our experience, the project works because we create a unique platform in which company can discover many scientific results in the field of their interest, and they can start establishing a relation with the research sector. And of course, it can decrease the risk involved in a first stage of process of product development. For researchers, of course, they can join a national network and have more visibility of their result, obtaining even a technology and commercial evaluation. And of course, assess funds for further development. Just some numbers. These are our scientific partners and their contribution to the project. The technologies we cover, the kind of companies participating. So we have national, but regional, national, and even foreign companies, SME, and even corporation. And then the result, 95, then we succeeded in doing 38 matches, and 21 of this project were actually financed. Okay.
Thank you, Madeleine. And for those who were trying to photograph the slides, I believe you will receive all of the slides, and I appreciate, Madeleine, you rushed through yours. I would like to move quickly to the next presentation, and that is from my colleague, Elena. She is working at the JRC. We work closely together on issues, but I believe today she will be speaking a little bit about her past.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to see so many familiar faces. Really looking forward to catching up with most of you, if possible all of you, and collaborating in the near future. As many of you know, I work with Giancarlo Caratti in JRC, Unit Intellectual Property and Technology Transfer. But today I have been tasked to embody another person. And this person is called Andrea Luni, who used to be, for many years, the seed fund and investment manager for the University of Oxford's technology transfer company, which used to be called ICIS Innovation, but now is called Oxford University Innovation. I just have one slide to share with you, if I can find it. Since the topic of this panel is best practices in setting up, implementing, and running proof of concept funds, I would like to draw your attention to such facilities that they had at the University of Oxford when they were implementing their technology transfer activities. Everything started back in 1999 when the British government allocated £15 million to 15 universities ranked by research excellence. So Oxford University clearly was one of those universities that received £1 million. At that time, the university decided to also allocate £1 million of their budget, and they also managed to attract 2 more million from 2 charitable organizations, the Wellcome Trust and the Gatsby Foundation. So the proof of concept fund at Oxford started in 1999 with £4 million under management. This is called Oxford University Challenge Seed Fund. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about how these funds are run and the success metrics. But before that, I also want to mention that sometime around, I think, 2010-11, this fund was fully invested. Some proceeds have already got back to the fund, but there was a moment when there were no more money available to be distributed to projects. So what the university decided to do was to fundraise for another fund, which is called Oxford Invention Fund. The interesting story about this fund is that it's based solely on donations. These are money provided by donors who don't expect any financial return. And typically, what we found was that this funding facility was very applicable to projects that have the potential to create social impact, but not necessarily very strong commercial success story, economic success story. So one example is a project that concerns gene replacement therapy for a very rare disease that leads to partial or complete blindness. With a very small market, clearly you cannot make a lot of sales on this product, but can improve the life of certain people. Then, around that time, they also started 2 more funds, which were externally managed by a company called PoC Investment Managers. And what is interesting about this fund, which was started in 2014, was that it was set up to take advantage of a government fiscal scheme, which basically allowed business angel investors and early stage investors to take advantage and have a tax relief if they put money into small, medium enterprises or startups. So we wanted to take, of course, advantage at the time of this new fiscal initiative, and this increased the portfolio of instruments that was available to Oxford academics and Oxford researchers for commercialization purposes. On top of everything, there's been an angels network that's been set up, local network, with over 100 business angels from Oxfordshire and around, who've been actively as well participating in the technology transfer and the proof of concept space for the University of Oxford. Now, how do those funds operate? Those funds, particularly the first 2, are evergreen funds. So this means that whatever proceeds they are from exits goes back to the funds, and then they invest more and more projects. They have applications on a rolling basis, so the academics and researchers can submit an application at any point in time during the year. But there is an investment committee that takes decision how to invest or which projects to invest in 4 times a year, every quarter. This investment committee consists of people from within the university, from the Technology Transfer Office, plus external industry experts. Now, another interesting fact to note is that when an academic or researcher wants to submit an application for this funding, they first call the Technology Transfer Office. They have to be assigned a Technology Transfer Project Manager, and they receive a lot of support from the project manager in the preparation of the application. The application is very easy to fill. The criteria is very simple. They look at 3 things: whether the invention is protectable, whether IPR, intellectual property rights, have been generated, and whether you can protect them or defend them in some capacity. The second criteria, is there a market potential for this technology? A clear business case has to be made that this can be turned into a product or a service that meets the market's needs. And the third is the team, whether the team buys into this vision and they're ready to allocate some of their time to support the creation of a new company that, for example, will exploit this technology. In terms of decisions, decisions are made on the spot. So when the applicants have the, let's say, the pitching moment in front of the investment committee, basically feedback is given straight after the pitch. There is no time lapse where decisions are made 2 weeks later or 2 months later. For me personally, now, why is this best practice? This is best practice because the success metrics are incredible. These instruments have in total, I think, provided over 10 million of really early stage funding for the University of Oxford, which has managed to attract I think they had around over 600 million pounds in total of follow-on investment. So you see the level of impact that these 10 million have unlocked. It's invested in several hundred projects. Certain exits have taken place with proceeds going back to the funds of the likes of 15, 20, 30 million pounds per project. So it's an incredible story financially as well, not to mention all the socially related considerations. Why this is successful and works? In my view, there are 2 or 3 reasons why this works. First is clearly there is a pipeline of projects that can be invested in clearly. Second, the transparency behind the process in which decisions are, the application process and how decisions are being made, and the fact that feedback is given simultaneously with the applications have increased the level of trust and motivation for the academics and researchers to try to tap into these financial instruments. And third, I would say the fact that the whole process and the application process is very simple. I think you need to fill a couple of pages and you go ahead and you participate and you receive simultaneously also support from technology transfer managers, if I may conclude here.
Thank you, Elena. The next presentation is from Eladio Crego, who comes from the investment side, and he's working with the Galician Innovation Agency. And without further ado, I would ask you to take the podium.
This one. Correct. Now we have a little bit of an issue. We have to go here.
Okay, and it works. Okay, so good afternoon to everybody, and I would like to thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to share with you our experience in the managing a science fund and the impact at the lesson learned by Fundación Barrier. Just for a very introduction, a little bit about Fundación Barrier. It's a full private organization, it's a non-profit organization, but it's completely private. And in the last 50 years, we invest around more than 160 million euros in Galicia, in the region of Galicia. You can see in the map, we are in a corner in Europe, northwest of Spain. In fact, the Roman Empire called us the end of the world, finished the ride, so we were the end of the world a long time ago. And some of the activities that we did in the foundation and we are doing in the foundation are related, for instance, with funding individual research projects, on supporting new researchers with a scholarship program with more than 15,000 scholarships in the last 50 years. But after all this activity related with research, we decided to analyze what's going on in our region about innovation and about research. And we found out this. This is in 2009. This is the university system in Galicia with 3 universities, with more than 6,000 researchers, more than 100 million euros in fundraising for research, 2,000 papers, 71 new patents, and regarding the translation, regarding the commercialization, 70,000 euros in revenue for royalties and milestone and file licensing. To analyze these figures, we make a comparison with other systems in Europe, and at that time we realized that regarding resources and production, we were doing well. Regarding translation and commercialization, we were not doing so well. In fact, in comparison with other research environments, we should have revenues around 1 to 2 million yearly in revenues, rather than 70,000 euros. So we had a problem. So we decided to implement a new instrument to funding proof of concept, to funding the commercialization of the technologies, with all these goals that you can see in the slide, but with one that is the major one, that is the last one, creating a new model using other models of Europe, using other models as an example, but defined our own model for Galicia. What activities did we support in our fund? Basically, patentability, international patent, business model definition, all the typical activities from a proof of concept fund, but more. For instance, in some of the projects, it is necessary a CEO, and hire a CEO, we funded to hire a CEO. It is necessary a BD, we put the money to hire a BD to introduce in the project. The idea is all the activities that are required to bring results to the market, all the activities. The idea is reduce the risk, because it's the point. The idea is put the money to reduce the risk perceived by the potential customers, for investors, for VC investors in the spin-off company, or for potential licensors of the technology. The question is reduce the risk. We have a very easy investment policy, but with I think one important thing that is different for other proof of concept funds. We required a funding collaboration agreement with the university or with the research center. And in this agreement, we more or less we introduce all the obligations of each party, but we define which is going to be the development plan, the milestones, the go, no-go milestones, monitoring, the contribution, and as well how we are going to share the potential returns and the future returns. Fundación Barriera is asking for part of the returns. We are trying to create an evergreen fund, and it means we are going to invest all the money that we receive in investing in new projects. There is one thing that is important in our investment policy is we don't want to be like another source of funding for the research groups. We don't want that the research group see us like, I have this, I have the regional plan, R&D plan, we have the national R&D plan, and we have Barriera Foundation to continue funding our research. We don't want that. The research team should see us like a partner. We are partners, we work together in the project. This is our evaluation process. For the very beginning, this is the total amount. We identified 100 potential projects to invest. We evaluate 35. We have had a positive pre-screening of 25, complete evaluation of 11, investment committed 9, and finally we approved 5. Just 5% of the project. We know that we have a problem in Galicia regarding technology transfer, so apart from the proof of concept fund, we invest in other areas to improve this activity. With training courses for technology transfer staff, secondly with in top technology transfer office for these people, as well as some international technology transfer network events that happen in Galicia in order to increase the level of this activity. regarding the lesson learned, there is one that for me is the most important, is the involvement of the research team, the commitment with commercialization. If there is no commitment with commercialization, it's better not to invest in this research group in this project. For me, it's the most important thing. The research group should be fully committed with commercialization, as well as should be like a strategic project for the group, not the second or the third project for the group, should be the first project for the group, for the research group. We minimize negotiation, for instance, with the university in terms of the share of the returns. We just have one kind of agreement for all universities, for all the projects, because time is money. The opportunity is not going to be for years there. So we don't want to waste our time negotiating the conditions. 2 minutes, okay. And one other thing is the continuous monitoring through Milestone. We have go, no-go milestone. It's a project, cannot pass one milestone, one no-go milestone, we stop funding this project. Regarding impact, that is important. We support 5 projects, 1 failed. We have 3 new international patents, more than 300 business contacts in order to commercialize the technology, more than 30 NDAs signed, more than 5 MTAs signed, 3 licensing agreements, but the most important thing for us, 2 new spin-offs, 16 new jobs in these 2 spin-offs. Half of these people, PhD, the other half, graduates. And regarding money or regarding some financial figures, these 2 spin-offs rose $12 million in Series A from international VCs. This is much more than the whole Galician system, the whole spin-off in Galicia system rose in the previous 5 years. Another indirect impact is that nowadays the government, the regional government, decide to use our model to implement other proof of concept funds with public money, but using exactly the same rules that we are using, milestones, sharing returns, all these things that are using now for the regional government and is part of the Galician R&D plan. And in this case, it's running nowadays, and we have, I think, close like 8 investments in 8 different projects. Another indirect impact is we transfer our methodology to more institutions in Spain in order that they can create their own proof of concept funds. And that's all. Okay. Thank you.
The next speaker in our program is Andrea Kaluga from the University of Pisa. Today he's speaking, I think, more on behalf of Netval, the Italian network of tech transfer professionals. The floor is yours, Andrea.
Okay, let's see. Okay, thank you. It is. Okay, thank you very much to the organizers for the invitation. I will not say a lot about proof of concept, but I think I will say quite a lot about learning and adapting to local needs in technology transfer. So at least for part of the topic, I am aligned. Yes, I will talk on behalf of Netval. Netval is the association in Italy which joins together almost all technology transfer offices from Italian universities, as well as the technology transfer offices from public research institutions and some research hospitals. And for example, in this area, University of Trieste, Pisa, Area Science Park are all members of Netval. So it is a network. It is fully financed by its associates. So we belong to the state. All universities belong to the state, almost all universities in this country. So the Ministry of University is our point of reference, but we are completely self-funded. These are our numbers. Almost 60 universities, 6 public research institutions, about 80% of university students and professors, and these are the numbers about patents, the number of TT professionals, and so on. Of course, this, the TTO managers, the TT managers belong to the members and not to Netval. What we are, I like this picture because first of all we are a community of people who basically do the same job. We include both professors who are involved in technology transfer and technology transfer managers who are not professors. So we are a very compact, strong, enthusiastic community, and our main objective is to share our experiences. I like to say this because I know that there are many people here from countries where a network does not exist, and we are really ready and willing to share our experience. We are in Italy, so we are not the very best in class like the US or the UK and so on. Maybe in relation to some countries, we are just a few years ahead, and we are we would like to share our experiences. We believe in these things. We believe that the valorization of research results is an obligation, not something that you might choose to do, and it implies taking care of researchers, and the generation of revenues is not our main motivation. We like to bring inventions to the market, but not necessarily to make a lot of money. If money comes, we are happy. And we are aware that a good technology transfer office is a crucial element of the system, but not the only one in the system. We need, of course, very good researchers, and we need other actors like companies, science parks, and so on. We try to do our job. Learning and adapting to local needs. This has always been a key issue in Netval. Why? Because there are huge differences in the Italian TT system. We cannot compare Milan Polytechnic, which is a top place, with some peripheral university. So we have a lot of learning and adapting in our country ourselves. And we try to do this. And the best, let's say, the best universities have been sharing during these years their experiences with those which are trying to learn. But in some cases, these peripheral universities have wonderful technologies, wonderful inventions. So this process has been very, very fruitful. Dynamics of learning. We, from Italy, try to learn from the best in class at international level. For example, the UK, for example, the ESTP Proton Network. We have been in Israel. It is an example that we like a lot. We have been in the US. We try to learn from the US. But also we try to learn from the best of us. The more experienced TTOs teach to the others. The more experienced TT managers are in touch. Research hospitals in this country are right now learning from universities. And this is a very, very nice phase. How to learn? This is the picture of Enrico Loccioni. He's not a professor, he's an entrepreneur. He started a very nice company in the center of Italy. He says there must be one reason why God has made us with 2 ears and only 1 mouth. Okay, so the first source of learning, listen. Okay, many people come to my university and talk a lot and talk a lot. So if you talk, you don't want to listen. Okay, you don't want to learn. You are just telling me. So first of all, let's hear. What have we been learning and adapting? Mistakes. We have been sharing mistakes. So those who have done mistakes have been sharing mistakes with the others. And also solutions, not only mistakes, contacts. Yesterday, for example, a university asked me, do you know a very good professional in software licensing? It's a rather specific job, and with a few WhatsApp messages, we found 5, 6 of these professionals. This is the kind of very simple and basic things that we do. We've been exchanging guidelines, rules and regulations. Some universities didn't have regulations for their patents, for their IP, the same for hospitals. Simply, we have been doing copy and paste and adapting, and we think we have been providing a positive contribution. Some examples. In Padova, they started a company, a knowledge transfer company. I'm not surprised, because for many years we have been hosting in our events people from Oxford, okay? So there has been this kind of learning. There are some regional TTOs in this region, in Lombardy, in Pisa, and so these TTOs, which are joining together at regional level, are trying to exchange their practices. Again, very simple. Patent and spin-off rules and regulations. Every year, some laws in this country change, and at the same time, some universities invent something new about how to organize relationships with spin-off companies and so on. Okay, we try and share this. 2 minutes. IP guidelines, very important. We have IP guidelines with an important association of technology transfer professionals in companies, so that not every time that a university meets a company, everything has to be started from zero. We can refer to these guidelines. What does it take to learn, to adapt? I think it costs very little. It may cost a little. It does cost something, okay? We have been doing this with a ridiculous budget. You need to be humble, okay, willingness to learn, and you need some absorptive capacity. If your TTO has 0 people, it's very difficult to learn, okay? You need some absorptive capacity at least, but it is not so expensive. What does it take? It takes talking, meeting people, doing some networking, okay? And we Italians talk a lot, you know, and we have been doing this quite a lot. We do this during dinners, during lectures. We have a very intense WhatsApp group. This was during a journey in Israel. You need to talk, to exchange, to create trust among associates. We really had a very nice time in these years, exchanging. We would like to exchange these practices with the countries which are here represented. Again, let me stress this point. We have been doing this with a lot of sense of belonging to our ministry and to our country, but we didn't get any money, okay? It's either because there is no money available for this kind of networking, or we were not good at grabbing it, no problem, but just using a little money from each university, I think we have been doing a lot of things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea. And our last but not least intervention this session is from Frank Tooley, who is from the Scottish Enterprise, and he will tell us about the situation in Scotland.
Good afternoon. Bit of scene setting first. So Scotland is a small country. It's only 5 million people. It's quite a wealthy country. It's got a gross national product of nearly 200 billion a year. That gross national product is due to food and drink, and it's the headquarters of lots of insurance companies and banks. It's also the economy is based on SMEs. 99.3% of the companies in Scotland are small companies. Being a wealthy country, we're able to support a development agency. I'm a government servant. I work for the government as part of a development agency which is really well funded by the Scottish Government. We get 270 million euros a year to help Scottish industry, to help the Scottish economy. That investment in Scottish enterprise in the space of 8 years is translated back into an impact to the Scottish economy of something like 9 times. A very small part of that budget is used to support spinning out companies from universities. We have a proof of concept program which is about 3 million a year. The reason that we have a proof of concept program is because Scottish universities are producing a lot of exploitable commercial results. Scottish universities receive around 400 million euros per year in research grants. They're the best in the world at producing papers in terms of value. Per $1 million produced, we produce 6.5 papers. And those are good papers. There's 10 citations per $1 million. That's second in the world, narrowly behind England. So Scottish universities are excellent. They're really well funded. They produce a lot of commercializable results. So there's an opportunity to exploit that research. We've been doing proof of concept in Scotland for a long time. There were 200 projects funded by Scottish enterprise, fully funded, 100% funding to university projects for a year or so, maybe 2-year projects. And from those over 200 projects, 38 spin-out companies were created that only created 500 jobs. We had a hard look at this outcome and decided it wasn't value for money. One of the reasons that there was such a small success in funding 200 projects and only having 38 spin-out companies result is because they were managed by what we called outcome managers with a very light touch. Each outcome manager had a large number of projects to manage. We had a large number of reasonably well-funded projects, and it didn't work. So we changed it. The changes from 2011 were that we now fund a very small number of very generously supported projects. We only support projects that will give a very large economic impact to Scotland. So they're only high-growth projects. The other change that we made is that Scottish enterprise don't decide what we fund. We have a panel of investment people from angel investors and VCs, and industry veterans and successful serial entrepreneurs. They select the projects that we bring to them, and we monitor the projects with that panel. We also do very intensive and expensive diligence before giving any funding. That's commercial diligence. We do diligence on the team. We do diligence for freedom to operate, and we also do technical diligence. The order there is important. All of the projects coming to us are coming from successful research groups with excellence, world-leading research. It's all technically excellent. What we want to fund is something that's commercially world-leading. The other changes that we've made is that there's a very heavy management overhead. I'm a project manager. I meet with my projects weekly. We have board meetings monthly. We also put in place a commercial advisor who is in their face every week. We also have a commercial champion who is the leader of the project. It's not the principal, it's not the professor, the principal investigator of the university who's the leader of the project. It's a commercial champion, somebody who's a serial entrepreneur who's in charge of the project. The other thing that universities really don't like, so they want to receive a grant and use it for 2 or 3 years, and they want to use it for what they want to use it on, and they want security of that funding is going to be there for 2 or 3 years because they want to employ people for 2 or 3 years. If you miss a milestone or a deliverable, we terminate the project. So the impact of the changes from proof of concept to what we changed the name as well, away from proof of concept to high-growth spin-out project. 28% of the project from 1999 to 2014 resulted in a spin-out. Now, 100% of the projects that we fund result in a spin-out. 3%, previously, before we made these changes, 3% of projects were terminated, no matter how badly they were going, no matter that the fact that some other IP has come along and been discovered that means that what you're working on isn't worth working on commercially. They weren't terminated. Now we terminate 2/3 of the projects that we start. Previously, we were investing 360,000 euros. We now invest nearly €1 million in each project. As a result of those changes, 87 million euros has been invested in the spin-out companies that we've created. The high-growth spin-out program has a timeline. This is the timeline. This is the first part of the timeline showing the yellow bars are gate reviews. So what we do is we have an application panel. We then have a panel to decide whether that's something that the panel thinks is worth funding. About half the projects that apply for funding are cut at that point. We then fund a project with 10 or 20,000 euros for a period of 3 months to find out whether we really want to do it. Then goes back to the panel, they pitch to the panel, and about half the projects at that point are cut, half are funded. We typically give a budget of a year funding and £200,000 at that point, a grant to the university. The university then uses that money to do the commercial feasibility, the technical feasibility, and then another gate review. That's the end of phase 1. At that point, it comes in and tries to get more money after the first year, and we have a budget up to £400,000 available for the next year or 18 months. It's another grant to the host institution, the university. If the panel likes their phase 2 proposal, maybe a third of proposals that come for phase 2 funding are cut. The panel don't think they were going to succeed in producing a high-growth spin-out company. The university projects then continue for a year or a year and a half, and then the company starts trading. At that point, they can't raise investment. Raising investment is incredibly hard. All companies need investment at that point. They've not got any customers, because you're not allowed to have customers if you're a university project. So getting investment at that point is impossible. So what we do is have a convertible loan. Convertible loan can be something like 100, 200, 300,000 pounds. It converts at a discount of 6%, and that gives the company who's spun out at that point an opportunity to raise the money that it needs to survive over the next 6 months or so. Lessons learned from doing proof of concept for a long time is it's all about people. So all technologies are excellent. Everything that is brought to the development agency for funding is technically brilliant. It's world-class people doing world-class research. It's published in peer-reviewed journals. There's always a big tick in the technology box. The technology is the easy part. University professors don't want to hear that. They've got world record, this and that. They want to hear that the technology is the thing that is going to make it commercially successful, but it's just not true. The thing that's going to make something successful as a company is the team. The team needs to be right. The commercial champion, we call it a champion because we used to call them CEO designates, but the CEO designate that is there at the start of the project might not be the one that is the right fit for the spin-out company, so he or she may get sacked, and we may find somebody else better. So we stopped calling them CEO designates right at the start of the project. They're CEO designates towards the end of the project, but we call them commercial champions when the project starts. So it's a commercial champion. It's absolutely key. That's who the PEP panel is investing in. The team that are going to spin out with the spin-out company. We want to see who that is right the way through the project. Principal investigators, academics, professors are why projects fail. The reason projects are terminated, the reason projects aren't funded, is because principal investigators, professors at universities, because they are really clever, technically, they think commercialization is easy. They think, oh, managing research, I do that. I'm really good at project management because I manage a group of lots of RAs and lots of PhD students. So managing the process of commercialization must be not as difficult as the really difficult science I'm doing. Academics are arrogant. Academics are absolutely convinced that commercialization is easy.
Some academics.
I've yet to meet an academic who is not very confident that they can learn commercialization. But commercialization is really difficult. It's really difficult to raise investment. They want to regard it as just another research grant. They want to use it to retain, somebody's finished a PhD, they want to keep that PhD so that they can be an RA and be really productive. That's what they want to use the commercialization money for. And universities are naive about technology. They believe that world-leading technology is sufficient. It's not. It's about people. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Giancarlo mentioned earlier in the smart specialization the strengths of this region. I might add that coffee is one of them, and coffee is planned. But since this event is entitled a workshop, before you get your coffee, I would like to invite the floor to put some questions to the panel. Do we have a microphone, gentleman here in the front? If others could indicate.
Hello, I'm Francesco De Michelis from Mito Technology, and I have a couple of questions, mainly from Lidwina, Eladio, and Frank. The first one is if you have any kind of strategy, if during your scouting activity you find that interesting technologies, but the researchers are not interested in becoming entrepreneur. And the second one is, how do you deal with the internal TTOs? Thank you.
See if this works. Yes, it works. Okay. Most of us, for us, when it comes to looking for technologies, the entrepreneurs, they find us. Because we don't invest in just a technology on its own and a researcher with a technology. So they come with us and we ask from them, okay, you need to have a business plan which is stating what's the technology, what is the problem to, what's the solution to which problem, what's your core value proposition, is your product scalable, who is your competition, where do you see your company in 2-3 years, etc. And what's your financial planning. So when it comes to linking researchers or scientists with entrepreneurs, we see that is done more at the university level. So they try to see if they can bring those two parties together and see if you can start a business around a technology. And when it comes with handling with TTO directors, I have them in my, they're shareholders in Unique, and the relationship, it's working very well. It's not something that like handling, like, I mean, they are on the same path as that I am, and as also they saw, they recognize the problem of like, okay, we need to start an investment fund outside of our investment or outside our decision power, because the same way you fall in love with your children. And you don't see the flaws anymore. So the same comes with technology. You fall in love with them, and you become blind of maybe when you look at the markets. So we work together very well. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll answer that question with the sticky issue of equity. So if a university academic wants something to be commercialized but doesn't want to spin out themselves with the spin-out company, there has to be a penalty for that. A lot of academics want their cake and eat it. They want to commercialize their technology, but also keep their safe job and their great pension and their consultancy and the security of being an academic. They don't want to spin out because they've got used to that. And if that is the case, they shouldn't get as much equity. And they often have an unrealistic expectation of how much equity they will own in the spin-out company. The same equity question comes about with dealing with TTOs. All the universities in Scotland have a different model. Some of them have, this is in the public domain, so I'm not breaking any confidences here, that some of the universities, 2 of the universities in Scotland, have a rule that they must own 50% equity of any spin-out company. That is a real barrier for getting investment into that startup company, and is a problem for us investing in those universities. Most of the universities in Scotland have a pre-investment equity of 20% or 22%. That's a more realistic TTO to deal with.
Related with this, your question, we don't just, for us, the spin-out is a result. We're looking for commercialization of the technology as licensee or a spin-out. So it's not we are looking for creating spin-outs. So it's not necessary that the research be an entrepreneur. And in fact, I prefer that not be an entrepreneur to create a spin-out as well. It's not the best CEO for the company. It's better that stay at the university, and maybe some of the fellows, some researchers pass to the company in order to translate the technology, in order to have the knowledge in the company, but not the main researcher.
Also, just from my experience from Oxford, would like to make an extra note. Yeah, I agree with Eladio that it can be a spin-out opportunity or it can be a licensing opportunity. Very often, I almost haven't seen a project where you will not need the expertise of the academic going forward, whether it's a licensing opportunity or a spin-out. It's very unlikely that the academic will become a CEO. Sometimes they become CFO of the company, but in the most of the cases, what happens is that the academics sign consultancy agreement and continue to be involved in the project via providing consulting services. And I can assure you that very few say no, because for them this is like cash now.
Hi, Lisa Cowie, EU for Tech Western Balkans Project. Question for Frank. Can you go back a bit and talk about the assessment panel, how you identify people, recruit them, retain them, and do you remunerate them?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. We tried to up the quality of our panel recently by procuring them with a fee attached. What we found with the panels is that they weren't as diligent at reading all the material. There's a lot of stuff to read, the project proposals and all the appendices, all the diligence that we've done. And they were coming to panels, and because they weren't being paid to be on the panels, they sort of felt, well, since I'm not, I'm giving up a day to do this panel and I'm not being paid, I'm only just going to read the proposal, and they hadn't read any of the appendices. So we tried to procure them for a fee, and because of European rules on procurement, it just became a nightmare to do that, and we gave up, and we had to use volunteers. So the group that we've got are excellent. We take them for a nice dinner and we pay their expenses, but we couldn't figure out a way to actually, we wanted to pay them, but because of the procurement rules around hiring consultants, it became just too much work to do, so we ended up not doing that. Oh yeah, expenses are, that's fine, but it's just paying them a fee is really difficult, because you have to show that the procurement process has to be absolutely open.
There was a hand at the back earlier. I'll take that question next.
Thank you. My name is Dan Enaki. I'm the head of the TTO office of the National Institute for Physics and Nuclear Engineering in Romania. I have a couple of questions and remarks, short, in a very speedy way done. So for the two persons who are discussing about the investment funds, if there are any activities related to, for instance, equities, not the gentleman from Ireland, investing like in equities and having an exit scheme at the end in some of the projects which they take. Second, I understood that the rate of success is something like between 6 to 10% of the projects which are submitted. If there is any policy regarding the others, maybe they need some support if there is such a scheme, such a thing from your side. For the lady from Miss Madalena, what is the life expectancy for the startup and spin-off which are in the area science park? Because we know a certain percentage dies after a short time. And the last question, the last remark is just a remark for Mr. Kaluga. I'm on his side because I'm a TTO, but many of the entities here are universities, and universities have fundamental research, which is also financed by the site, and definitely we try to convert or move the scientists towards the, let's say, practical activities, making some viable application for their patents in order to be commercialized later on. But we cannot say that this is a compulsory thing, that all this should, end in a practical things. Thank you.
Thank you for that impressive suite of questions. I propose to give each member of the panel 1 minute, starting from the right and working left, to address those. So if, Andrea, you would start.
Yes, very, very interesting question. The issue of, let's say, technology transfer and big science or fundamental research. A few months ago, I was at the Weizmann Institute in Israel. They do basic research. They want to publish. They're wonderful scientists, and still their knowledge transfer company is perhaps the most successful in the world. They don't force any scientist to get involved in technology transfer, and they hope that their scientists get in love with the technology transfer activity. Once they are involved with the TTO, the scientists are somehow, like my colleague here said, are taken sort of apart from the exploitation scheme, so it can be done. In Italy, there are wonderful inventions in physics, which maybe in a different way from life science and ICT and so on, get to become wonderful innovations and startups. I think the process is different, the culture is different, physicists have a different mindset, but it is, I think, very, very fruitful to work with them, with patience, without forcing them. I think they hate to be forced to do things, but little by little they can be engaged. They may fall in love with the technology transfer activity.
Briefly, the project I present was about licensing to existing companies, not about startups. So I ask Steve if he agreed to answer the question.
Very briefly, I actually touched on this earlier on. I said when I arrived from Silicon Valley, the first thing I said to my colleagues in the incubator was too many companies were surviving for too long and not enough were dying. The reason for that was that we have evaluated about 1,600 project ideas. The number of companies founded was about 50. The number in which we took an equity stake was about 20. So the fall-off rate is almost exactly the same as you see in Silicon Valley. It's just that our fall-off happens before founding the company. So we have a long and complicated and stringent pre-evaluation phase, a pre-seed phase, a pre-incubation phase, all of which leads to a massive reduction, a massive filtering, so that when we actually get to the stage of founding the companies, 95% of them are still active after a 5-year period, something which is unheard of in places like Silicon Valley because 95% of them die. But that's because in Silicon Valley, you found a company the morning after you had the idea, and if you fold it 6 months later, the next day you have another idea and you found another one, and it's not a big deal. After you've founded 3, entrepreneurs start to be taken seriously by venture capitalists because they've got some experience and a few scars. Here, at least when I arrived about 8-9 years ago, if you founded a company and it failed, for 7 years, no one would touch you. So my theory, as I explained it when I first arrived, would have created a generation of bankrupts incapable of running companies here in Italy. not the best advice, so I apologize to all of my colleagues for having given that advice when I first arrived. They quickly put me right. So the answer is an answer that needs to be qualified, because otherwise it's a distortion. If I say that the companies that we found here have a 95% success rate, it's because we eliminate the failures before founding the company. That experience is very context specific. I think it's probably more applicable to some of the contexts that you all live and work and have to survive in. It's less applicable in other contexts in America or in Israel or around the world, where the rules are very different, where the rules and regulations are different, but also the culture is very different. The other aspect that I've been reminded of in the last few years is, even as the laws are changing here in Italy, and they are changing slowly, but they are changing, we will still face the stigma attached to bankruptcy or a failed company. Even if the law permits you to start another company the day after you fold, that doesn't mean people will be enthusiastic about supporting you, because the culture takes a lot longer to change. And that's something that we need to be aware of too. Thanks, Patrick.
So a part of answering that question is reputational risk for universities as well as the individuals. Universities in Scotland will not allow a company to spin out unless they have 18 months of funding in place. So companies don't fail. They've got 18 months runway there and will succeed. They'll change their business plan, they'll change what they're doing during that period, and they'll continue. The other part of the question was what happens to all the companies that don't pass through the panel, that get rejected by the panel. There's lots of other projects and programs and support mechanisms in Scotland available. So companies that are assessed as not being high growth companies that will be contributing hugely to the Scottish economy are not funded by the programme I described, but they are still funded by other mechanisms that are available.
Yeah, one thing that I think your question was, do you provide like any additional support to companies you reject or you don't invest in? Of course, we have like limited capacity in people and in time. But one thing what we always try to do is give the entrepreneur proper feedback on why we didn't invest. Most investors will give, I wouldn't say all, but a lot of them will just give the excuse of, okay, it doesn't fit within our portfolio currently, or, well, we don't have time to look at it, we are busy. But we try to say, okay, we think there's not a product market fit for reason A and B. We don't believe in, and I say believe because we don't know if you're right or wrong. We think your team needs certain you need certain additions to the team. We think, well, etc., etc. And we always offer the entrepreneur, okay, if you have thought this over and you have solutions to the things that we address to you, you're always free to pitch to us again. And so they have the opportunity to knock on our door again. So that's that's how we help.
In our case, we provide with all the evaluation. We provide as well with short of document with the weakness of the project, and they have time to improve the project. But most of the time, we don't invest in a project not because of the technology, not because of the freedom to operate or these sort of things. We don't invest because of the team, because of the commitment of the team with the commercialization. And this is something that we cannot change. And this happens because most of the time the TT office push the project, push the technologies, and try to, commercialize the technology. But the research group doesn't want to do that, doesn't want to invest time to do that. So it doesn't make sense for me, but it's happened.
Okay, again, just a couple of final comments from my end, and again, referring to my experience from Oxford. Actually, my colleague Matthias will share with you the perspective of JRC in the next panel. So at Oxford, yeah, as I said, just two things. A lot of the commercialization projects that I referred to were actually outcome of, believe it or not, basic and fundamental research. Very often, for a groundbreaking technology to be developed or invented, that's a platform technology and can become potentially a spin-out, very often this is an outcome of fundamental or basic research, and also because for strictly applied research at Oxford, there was also another commercialization activity called research collaboration, of course, where companies will fund directly the research project, and then they will own any intellectual property that was created out of this project. So these sort of activities never ended with a technology transfer company. So that's one remark. The second, as I mentioned, in 1999, they started a proof of concept fund. At the same very time, the university created their intellectual property policy that very clearly stipulated not only who owns the intellectual property rights when IP is created, but also who will benefit from the commercial exploitation of these IPRs. And this is the year when we saw the technology transfer activities really started flourishing. The whole activities was basically unlocked at the moment when you had these two elements together: very clear intellectual property policy and proof of concept facility. And throughout all these years, there have been around 70 or 80 spin-outs created. That is definitely not a big number for the University of Oxford and their research budget, but the success rate is over 90%, and we're talking about 10 years down the line, over 90% of those companies are alive, and many of them flourishing.
Thank you, panel, and thank you, audience. With that, I would like to close this session. Enjoy your coffee,